Advaita Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very
much.
That was really wonderful, Shashwin. Thank you very much. I know
you chant nicely, Shashwin. Very nice.
You are fighting the noise of the fireworks.
Yes.
And in the morning, you told me the best thing about fireworks is the sound.
Oh, okay.
And now you're fighting the sound. But we could hear you, so it was okay. You didn't.
Very clear. Very clear and very nicely pronounced.
Yeah, he can pronounce so well. So we are doing Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 5. And the name of chapter 5 is Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. And we are on text 12 today. So, Prabhuji, I'll let other devotees join in, but we can recite the text and then I can introduce and hand over to you.
Okay. You want me to actually chant the text then? Yeah?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yukta karma palang tattva.
Yukta karma palang tattva.
Shantim apnoti naishtikim.
Shantim apnoti naishtikim.
Ayukta karma karena.
Ayukta karma karena.
Ale shukto nibadyate. Do the word for word?
Yes.
You want word for word? Okay. Yuktaha.
Yuktaha.
One who is engaged in devotional service.
One who is engaged in devotional service.
Karma palang.
Karma palang.
The results of all activities.
The result of all activities.
Tyaktva. Giving up.
Giving up.
Shantim.
Shantim.
Perfect peace.
Perfect peace.
Apnoti.
Apnoti.
Achieves.
Achieves.
Naishtikim. Unflinching.
Unflinching.
Ayuktaha.
Ayuktaha.
One who is not in Krishna consciousness.
One who is not in Krishna consciousness.
Karmakarena.
Karmakarena.
For enjoying the results of work.
For enjoying the results of work.
Hale.
Pale.
In the result.
In the result.
Saktaha.
Saktaha.
Attached.
Attached.
Nibadyate.
Nibadyate.
Becomes entangled.
Becomes entangled.
Okay, so Srila Prabhupada has rendered the following translation. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of labor, becomes entangled. So we can repeat together, the steadily devoted soul.
The steadily devoted soul.
Attains unadulterated peace.
Attains unadulterated peace.
Because he offers the results.
Because he offers the results.
Yeah, of all activities to me.
Of all activities to me.
Whereas a person who is not in union.
Whereas a person who is not in union.
With the divine.
With the divine.
Who is greedy for the fruits of his labor.
Who is greedy for the fruits of his labor.
Becomes entangled.
Becomes entangled.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada has given the following purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In the Bhagavatam, The cause of anxiety over the results of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality. That is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. But one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have any peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna. Sorry, let me try that again. Realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Okay, so this verse actually is the summary study of the last 6 verses. That's the first thing to understand. And here we're actually discussing the platform of Nishkam Karma Yoga, the platform of renunciation of the fruits of one's activity in Krishna consciousness, because one is bound to act. That is unavoidable. In 3rd chapter, Krishna says we can't even be inactive for a moment, so we are bound to act. So this personality, this steadily devoted soul, is one who sees that Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is supporting and pervading everything. Krishna is the result of everything. Krishna gives the ingredients. Krishna gives the impetus for work. Krishna gives the results of work. Wherever a soul like this looks, that soul sees Krishna everywhere. Steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. Because wherever they look, they see Krishna. And whatever they're doing, they know actually that it has to be dovetailed with Krishna. Actually, I took this liberty actually. Will you allow me to, what do you call that? Can I share screen?
Yes, Prabhuji, I'll let you share this.
Okay, because there's something I want to show actually. You have to enable me so I can do it.
I have.
You have, okay. Okay. Can everyone see what I'm displaying?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so this is a very special kind of joint. Srila Prabhupada uses this word, actually, in different situations to indicate how we have to bring our activities into alignment with Krishna. This is called a dovetail joint. And I'm sure you must have heard Prabhupada use this word in purports in Bhagavad Gita, that one must dovetail his activities with Krishna. Actually, I'm just going to expand this a bit so we can see it a bit more clearly. Now, you will notice here that in this diagram, the part of the joint looks like the tail of a dove. I don't know if you've seen that, but the tail of a dove is spread like this when they're flying, especially. When they're on the ground, the tail is brought together, but when they're flying, it's spread. It gives lift to the bird, so it's a dovetail. So that is the shape of one half of the joint here, the dovetail. And you'll see that it perfectly fits the other part of the wood. Actually, you don't see this joint so much now, but if I go back into my childhood, I remember that actually pretty much any chest of drawers would have this joint on it. Now they don't do that so much. But it perfectly shows how this sage, which is described in this verse, the steadily devoted soul, is perfectly aligning his activities with Krishna. It's called Prabhupada calls dovetailing. So I thought I'd show, there's a couple others here as well, I think. Let me just find the others. This one is a nice diagram because it expands so you can see the joint as it's separated. No, the dovetails are clearly visible, spread like this. And it fits in the joint. The two pieces of wood fit together perfectly and there's no gap. And the wonderful thing about this joint is that if you try and pull it apart, it only becomes tighter. So this is how we have to dovetail our activities. It means whatever activities we have to do in mindfulness of Krishna. And when we can do that, then we become what Krishna is describing here, a steadily devoted soul. And peace can only come actually really when we let go of this business of trying to bend the material nature to our will, try and squeeze something out of it. There's one more picture as well I want to show. This is what I remember as a boy. This is a chest of drawers. You can see it's been photographed from the side. And you can see the dovetails very clear, and it fits so perfectly with a piece of wood. You can't pull the front off that drawer. The harder you pull, the more tightly that joint. So this is what Prabhupada means when he says we must dovetail. In other words, Krishna is there. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Krishna is running everything, actually. Krishna is everywhere. One of Krishna's names is Vasudeva. Vasudeva means one is present everywhere. So this is how the steadily devoted soul sees that wherever he looks, it may be actually material energy, but that devoted soul knows that if I can dovetail my activities with the Supreme, then it actually becomes spiritual energy again. It no longer is material, it becomes spiritualized because we deal with it in the right way, in the right consciousness. Now, by contrast, actually, this is the steadily devoted soul. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. But you get the idea, no?
Yes, Prabhuji.
The two pieces of wood fit together so perfectly, actually, that there's no space in between. So this is this soul. So it's summarized in this verse. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. We must act. But the trick is to make everything done so it dovetails with Krishna's nature in Krishna consciousness. This is why Srila Prabhupada has called our society the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because that is our goal. The sum and substance of everything that Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad Gita is always think of me. And if one can do that, one always thinks of Krishna, actually the communion will be perfect, just like the dovetail joint we were looking at. But this is a comparison verse as well. Krishna is summarizing, but it's also comparison. Because when we do that, when we perfectly align our activities with Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, then there's peace, actually. There's an unadulterated peace. Nothing can disturb that peace, actually. No material circumstances can do that. But by contrast, Krishna is showing what it's like on the other side. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, that is our position, actually. We have to be in union with the divine. It's our constitutional position. But if we don't do that, if we're not in communion with the divine and greedy for the fruits of activities, that is mostly actually what the living entity is doing. Because living entity is pleasure seeking. And therefore, we're supposed to get that by being in communion with Krishna, perfect communion. And if we do that, just like we're singing that song now during Kartik, that Krishna is drowning the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. That is what happened. If we agree to gratify Krishna's senses instead of our own senses, then we drown in pools of ecstasy. That is the symbiosis, the relationship between Krishna and his devotee. If we simply agree to gratify Krishna's senses, Krishna responds by drowning us in pools of ecstasy. That desire we have to enjoy becomes perfectly satisfied. We have an unlimited desire to enjoy, and Krishna is the unlimited, and therefore is actually the only person who can satisfy us like that. Just like this little finger. This little finger is part of my hand, no? The thing is that this little finger, if it acts in communion with the body, if it does the things it's supposed to do in the direction of the body, then actually it gets everything it needs. No, I just gave the example in another class we did this week, actually. But at the moment, there are nice, because it's Diwali time, so there are so many wonderful sweets. So my hand is thinking, I'm tired of giving the sweet to the mouth. I want to enjoy the sweet. So my wife made guguras. I don't know if you know what guguras are.
Yes.
Nodding. It's a very wonderful sweet, actually. It's like, right up there with the topmost sweets. So the hand could say, okay, I'm fed up with this giving. Why must I give this gugura to the mouth? But rather let me enjoy it. So that then the hand decides, okay, it begins to scrunch the gugura. But the more it scrunches the gugura, what happens? The pieces go everywhere, actually. And does the hand actually enjoy the gugura? It doesn't, actually. In order to get the enjoyment through acting, it has to act in communion with the rest of the body. Has to put the gugura in the mouth. And then it's chewed and it's swallowed, goes in the stomach. And then the hand and the whole body gets the benefit of that. So this is our constitutional position, actually, that we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and we're supposed to act in communion with the whole, for the benefit of the whole. And if we do that, then we enjoy unlimitedly, which is actually what we want. We're Anandamoy Sat. We are fashioned like that by our Creator. That our desire is to enjoy, because that is the nature of anything which is spiritual, Anandamoy Sat, that it is filled with the spirit of enjoyment, actually, Ananda, spiritual bliss. But unfortunately, we become connected to the material nature. And the reason for that, Krishna is giving that in this verse, actually, that we're greedy for the fruits of our labor. We think we can enjoy separately. And we think if I can just have this material experience, I will be satisfied. But it never works out like that, actually. It never works out like that. Because we can't. It's not possible, actually. Even to get this material experience that we want, we require input from Krishna as the Supersoul. We can't even do it on our own. So Krishna allows us this experience so that we can get the experience for ourselves. That the more we struggle to enjoy separate from Krishna, the less it works out. And the further we get away from that Ananda which we are constitutionally supposed to enjoy. So this is the theory. We need to talk about the practice, but I want to look back at the verses. I said this is a summary. This verse is a summary of the previous 6 verses, beginning with 7. Krishna has summarized it here and then compared. So we just need to look back so that this really sinks in. What is Krishna actually telling us here? This is Nishkam Karma. Actually, Nishkam, Nish means not or none. Karma means desire. And Nishkam Karma means activity. Activity without desire. So activity without desire to enjoy the result. This is how we actually do it, because this chapter is entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. How can we act in such a way that we come completely in communion? We dovetail ourselves with the Supreme. How can we act in that way? So Krishna is summarizing in these verses how that is done. And then, because Krishna is a very expert public speaker, he is summarizing what he said at the end of the little section. So this little section is 7 to 12. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 is the information, and Krishna is summarizing, comparing in the last verse. So one works in devotion. This is 7. You can look at the verses with me. It's a very nice summary, actually. When one works in devotion, who is a pure soul and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Although always working, such a man is never entangled. Because we got the transcendental knowledge from the previous part of the discussion, from the 4th chapter. No? When we act in that knowledge, actually, then we dovetail our activities, we offer the result to Krishna rather than trying to enjoy ourselves. That's a pure soul, one who does that. Control his mind and senses, because this mind and senses require control. If we allow them to do what they want, they will get us into serious trouble, actually. They will naturally go after material enjoyment because that's the place we're residing. So therefore, we need to keep a tight rein on them. Actually, Krishna's example from second chapter is very instructive like that. He uses the example of the tortoise. So tortoise is a very amazing creature, actually. If there's any danger, what does the tortoise do? He simply retracts his arms and legs and head within the shell. And then most animals can't even get to him because of the tough shell. So Krishna uses this example to show that a devotee, one who understands that if he tries to enjoy the results of work, it'll simply entangling him more and more. So what he does, he withdraws the senses from those activities. He doesn't engage in sense gratification, because we know that it doesn't really satisfy. It's temporary in nature. And it's just like chewing the chewed. We've chewed it so many times, but it doesn't really satisfy. So that sage has learnt that. So therefore, he withdraws the senses within himself, doesn't use them for sense gratification. But for the purpose of purification, for Krishna's pleasure, then he will engage them in Krishna's service. So one who works in devotion is a pure soul who controls his mind and senses. Must do that. Actually, all forms of yoga are based on that principle. We must learn to control the mind and senses. They mustn't do whatever they want. We must carefully direct them because their nature is to be very lusty. Krishna deals with this in 3rd chapter. No? Arjuna says, how is it that we know what the duty is, but we always do the wrong thing sometimes? Not always, but we do the wrong thing sometimes. So Krishna answers, it's lust only. born of contact with material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So that is the problem we have. That lust is we want to enjoy separately from Krishna, we want to enjoy the material nature, but it never really works out. So we have to learn that and realize that we need to take a different trajectory if we're actually going to enjoy, because it's a kind of promise from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, that actually if you control your mind and senses and engage them properly, you will enjoy. Actually, we'll enjoy more than we do in the material experience. That was in there in second chapter as well. Krishna was discussing with Arjuna, what is it, how is it that the person is able, the sage is able to maintain his position, even though he's not engaged in sense gratification? And Krishna there answers that it's a higher taste that he gets by doing that, actually, by restraining the objects of the senses from the objects of the senses. Like that, we naturally get a higher taste. That is the spiritual taste. So that is how it's maintained. When it controls his mind and senses, that's how he's able to do it. And we all have a sense of that. When we engage in Krishna conscious activity, we get that higher taste, little bit, little drops here and there we get. And the more we advance, the more we get that taste. And that taste sustains us. We remember that taste. And we remember Krishna's talking in Bhagavad Gita, you mustn't let the senses run away. Through deliberate spiritual intelligence, for regulation and deliberate spiritual intelligence, we have to work on ourselves, not to get involved in that sense gratification, but rather to dovetail whatever we're good at. Actually, for devotees, it's so easy to do that. Whatever we're good at, let's do that for Krishna, whatever it is. In this way, everything, every breath can be turned into devotional service. It's not that we have to go to the temple, to engage in devotional service. No, if we have the right consciousness, anything we do can be done in Krishna consciousness for Krishna's pleasure. Oh, Krishna's put me in this position and give me a particular kind of work. Krishna knows what's best for me. So let me offer the results of this work to Krishna. My dear Krishna, thank you so much for putting me in this position, with the facility to do these things. That's actually amazing that you put me in that position. It's just right for me to be able to do this. Let me offer the results of my work for Krishna. I'm working to maintain myself. I'm a devotee. So it's actually, it makes it Krishna conscious. And then, if we keep even pictures of the deity at home, we can understand, okay, my house is a temple. So is it my house or is it Krishna's house if it's a temple? It's actually Krishna's house. So I'm maintaining Krishna's house. This is how we have to be very practical and take Krishna's theory and turn it into practical application in our lives, to be conscious that the things we're doing, what are they for actually? And when we detect it's for my pleasure, we can go, whoops, actually, this should be for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna's put me in this situation. So therefore, it must be possible to turn this situation into a Krishna situation. It must be possible. Otherwise, why has Krishna put me in this situation? This is the test of the philosophy. It must work in any situation. Otherwise, what is the use of it? This is why Prabhupada said you don't have to join the temple to be Krishna. Can you stay at home? One reporter asked him. Prabhupada said, oh, yes, you can stay at home. So it's a question of our consciousness. You don't have to go to the temple or be with devotees to be Krishna conscious. It's a question of directing our consciousness in the proper way, actually. So one who works in devotion is a pure soul and controls his mind and senses, dear to everyone. Because if you're dear to Krishna, automatically you satisfy everyone. That's the amazing thing, actually. Even your enemies, if you satisfy Krishna, even your enemies will be satisfied with you. That is like a byproduct of Krishna consciousness. Everyone is dear to him. Why is that? That's because he recognizes everyone is Krishna's part and parcel. All these living entities are actually identical twins. Krishna says in another place, by comparison with himself, he understands that everybody else is in the same boat, stuck in this material nature. So we recognize they're all Krishna's part and parcel, like that. So therefore, everyone is dear to a soul who is in communion with Krishna, no matter what kind of body they're in. Just like Jad Bharat is like that. He got into this situation where he was a deer in a previous life because he was alone in the forest. He was a great soul on the platform of Bhava Bhakti, almost perfect, but he became attached to a deer. And as a result of that, he took birth as a deer, but by Krishna's grace, he could remember his past activities. So he didn't behave like a deer. He used to go to the hermitages of the sages and he would listen. And then the next lifetime, he was born as Jad Bharat. And he thought, let everyone leave me alone. And therefore, he acted like a madman. So actually, one time, King Rahugana was looking for a fourth personality to carry his palanquin. So the other three kind of co-opted him. They press-ganged him, actually. You come and carry the palanquin for King Rahugana. But the thing is, he was such a great soul that he didn't want to step on the ants. He considered that they're also God's creatures. You know, there's a spirit soul there. Krishna is also there in the ant. So he didn't want to step on the ants. So this is what happens. Actually, all living entities become dear to that person. And because he's in communion with Krishna, then actually he becomes dear to all living entities. That's a very natural consequence. So this is one part of it. This is action in Krishna consciousness. Considering every moment, you know, Krishna is my Lord and Master. Krishna is my protector. You know, I offer myself to Krishna, offer my results and my activities to Krishna. Now, how does this pan out? Actually, how does this act? What is the internal working of that? So that's described in 8 and 9. A person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening and closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and he's aloof from them. Because that's all the body. What's described here is the 2 sets of senses. You know, there are 5 knowledge-acquiring senses and there are 5 working senses. So Krishna is talking initially about the knowledge-acquiring senses, the information we're getting from the outside. It's an apparatus. You know, just like if you go swimming under the sea, you need an aqualung, you need a wetsuit, you need a weight belt, you need flippers, you need a snorkel, you need a demand valve, you need all these things, because water is not a natural environment for us. So similarly, we're in the material world. It's not a natural environment for the spirit soul. So therefore, you need this apparatus. It's called the material body. So it's got senses, knowledge acquiring and working. So Krishna is saying, while the senses are working with their objects, these knowledge acquiring ones, no? And then moving about, sleeping, breathing, and later on, speaking, evacuating. They're the working senses, actually. That's how we interact with the material nature. We go and we do things, we say things, we want to take things. So this is the senses, the 2 sets of senses Krishna is describing in this verse. The knowledge acquiring senses and also the working senses. And he knows, the soul knows that, okay, I've got a material body, so the material modes are at work, you know, and the senses are engaged with their objects. And actually I'm aloof. And what's going on here is actually the result of my prarabdha karma. It's the things which I've done in previous lifetimes which have produced this material body. In 8th chapter, Krishna says that. Arjuna says, what is this karma? Actually, there are some questions Arjuna asks at the beginning of the 8th chapter. What is this karma? And Krishna answers, he says, it's activity which produces another material body. So a steadily devoted soul may be in the material body, and he knows there's prarabdha karma, karma that's manifest now. That is this material body. So he knows that the senses are engaged with their objects. But he also knows I'm Krishna's spirit soul. I'm aloof, actually. I'm not actually part of this thing. You know, it's going on, but actually that's all going on under the modes of material nature, which are under Krishna's direction. So this is the internal workings, you know, because even an introspective sage is always active, but the point is his activities are directed to Krishna. So he knows all these things are going on within himself. But he knows also that he's only the material senses are engaged with their objects and he's aloof from them. So he's detached. That is the point, detachment. And that is what Krishna is preaching throughout Bhagavad Gita, actually. That is the starting point. We have to be detached. Detached from knowing that we don't belong here. Whatever results I'm getting through my activities are temporary. You know, that they'll come and they'll go. So a wise man does not delight in them. Krishna says that, no? But someone who's wise doesn't engage in this sense gratification, know well there's a beginning and an end, and therefore he doesn't delight in it. But rather he reaches for something else, the higher taste, by dovetailing himself with the Supreme Lord, by gratifying his senses. Actually, that's the definition of devotional service. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam, Bhakta Uchite. That's a verse from the Naraja Pantaratra. Actually, that this is actually what devotional service. Rishikena, actually to engage the senses. Rishikesha, in the service of the Lord of the senses. Krishna is the Lord of the senses. And that is bhakti, that is the definition of bhakti, to actually engage our senses in the service of the Lord of the senses. So this is what this steadily devoted soul is doing. You know, as far as possible, he's offering the results of his work to Krishna, trying to please Krishna's senses. Karma yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. That every act, every breath, every step is actually for Krishna's pleasure. And therefore the detachment is there, complete detachment. So this is the internal workings in 8 and 9. So now this principle of detach, actually in 15th chapter, Krishna says you need that axe. The material nature is like a banyan tree, and you need that axe to cut down that banyan tree. And what is the axe? That is detachment, based on knowledge. We got the Krishna's explaining transcendental knowledge and how you get it in the previous chapter. If we have that knowledge, we must know that we have to be detached. We have to be detached from this material nature. We don't belong here, actually. There may be prarabdha karma, there may be the manifestation of my previous karma. So therefore I'm in this world, but I'm not of this world. That is the understanding. And based on that transcendental knowledge, then we can be detached. You know that the pleasures and pains will come and go. Just like Krishna says in the 14th verse of the 2nd chapter, just like the coming and going of winter and summer seasons. And Krishna tells you, you have to learn to tolerate it. It's going to come and it's going to go. Just like Krishna says, the sea is always being filled by rivers, but it remains steady. So detachment is a very, very important thing. It is the underpinning of our devotional service, actually, based on knowledge of how things actually are. I'm actually Krishna's part and parcel. I don't belong here. Therefore, I must be detached from this work, otherwise it will entangle me. So this is what Krishna is saying. Then again, 11. I said it's a summary. 12 is a summary of these verses. In 11, the yogis abandoning attachment. Over and over again in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will come to this point. Over and over again, we get this point. Must be detached. Regulate the senses. Be detached. Have spiritual intelligence so you know what to engage in and what not to engage in. The yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, and intelligence. Everything, and you can owe the rest. You engage everything, and you can owe whatever you're not engaging, you can owe me. This is Krishna's position. See, the thing is, it has to be Atmaniveda. We have to surrender ourselves. No, it doesn't just mean ourselves, it means everything about us. Completely to dovetail ourselves with Krishna. You know, this is what this passage is all about, action in Krishna consciousness, because we have to act, but let's do it in such a way that it brings us into communion with the divine, with Krishna, as much as possible. You know, we're in the practicing stage. We're performing sadhana bhakti. So for us, we have to take it, you know, little by little, according to our understanding and our ability. You know, we have to take it little by little. And as much as we can, engage ourselves and always want to do more. Because right now we have one foot in each world. Or one of our favorite sannyasi disciples of Srila Prabhupada in South Africa, he says, actually, we have both feet in the material world, but we're looking towards the spiritual world. That's kind of our position. I'm going to be kinder. I'm going to say we have one foot in each world. You know, we have some material things going on, and we have some spiritual things going on. But the goal is always to try and when you walk, you transfer the weight from one foot to the other when you walk. And then the other one comes up in the air, and then you transfer the weight to that foot. So we have to be like that. We have to practice. Because in the spiritual world, it's not different from what we're doing. But rather, it's 24/7. That's 100% then. So now we're in sadhana bhakti. We have to practice that. So we have to preach to ourselves about detached work. I don't know about you, but I have to preach to myself sometimes. You know, you're faced with a situation. Now, Shyamananda, Prabhu, is this for you or is it for Krishna? Because that's the only two choices we have. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, no, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, no, the steadily devoted soul is not attached to the results of activity. These verses are not meant to be something we study and then, you know, we go back to our lives. Rather, these verses, we're meant to remember the discussion, the knowledge that Krishna is giving us, so that when we're faced with a real life situation, we know what to do. As Krishna says that, actually, that this soul has no doubts about work. Has no doubts. He knows. Through deliberate spiritual intelligence, he knows. Okay, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this, you must be detached. Even if it's not such good work, even if it's wonderful work and we would normally become very elated and happy. No, we have to be detached. Even if the work is not so good, it's something which is abominable even. No, we have to be detached. You know, we have to, okay, I'm in this situation. Like one time one of my godbrothers, there was a gathering in Mayapur, and they were doing parikram, I think. One of my godbrothers asked my spiritual master, he was saying that what do we do in a practical situation? What do we do? Sometimes we're put in the situation where, because we're working for some boss or we're in a situation, we can't completely control it. And maybe we have to do something which is not so good. It's not so much in keeping with the principles of Krishna consciousness. So my spiritual master said, he thought for a minute and he said, you can pray to Krishna, my dear Lord, I'm so sorry I have to do this thing. It's not so pure, it's not so wonderful, but I have to do it because it's my position. I have to work for this boss, whatever. So you pray to Krishna like that, he said, and Krishna will understand. Because in this world, every kind of activity, every kind of work is covered with some fault. This is a verse from the 18th chapter, and Krishna has explained that everyone is under the modes. Everything in this material nature is under the modes. So every kind of work is covered with some fault. So if we offer it to Krishna, Krishna removes the fault. Just like we offer our vegetarian foodstuffs to Krishna, actually we're also guilty of killing. Do you know that? When you offer your beetroots and your carrots to Krishna, you are also guilty of killing. That beetroot and that carrot had life, but you put it in the sabji and you cooked it with the chaunts, and now that carrot left its body. So we're also guilty of killing. There's fault in it. But because we offer it to Krishna, Krishna removes the fault and it becomes pure. So similarly, our work is like that. It may not be perfect. It may be something we have to do. But, let's offer it to Krishna. My dear Lord Krishna, please excuse me, And my spiritual master said, Krishna will understand. Because Krishna sees our situation. As struggling devotees, he knows we're trying to come to him to the best of our ability. So we have to be very practical. This is not just a theoretical discussion. This is something we can take into any situation and use it to actually purify ourselves. Any situation. It doesn't matter what it is. Because this philosophy must be practical. You must be able to use it on a moment-by-moment basis in your life. Otherwise, what's the use of it? I hope you get that point. This is not just a theoretical discussion. So the yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, and intelligence, and even the senses, because the senses are rascals. You know what the senses want to do? They're described in other places as snakes, actually. So what is the snake famous for? Someone can unmute and tell me, what are snakes famous for? I'm sure somebody knows the answer to that question. Yes.
I think it's for biting or...
Yes, they're very famous for biting. That the slightest provocation, a snake will bite you. Actually, so the senses are described like that they want to bite. They want to bite the sense object like that, all the time. So this is why Krishna is saying, even with the senses are so difficult to control. But the yogi who's abandoning attachment can act with the body, mind, intelligence, and even the senses for the purpose of purification. That's what I mentioned from second chapter, no? Krishna is saying the sage will exhibit his senses for purification, but it is sense gratification. Oh no, we withdraw them. And that's based on spiritual intelligence, transcendental knowledge. No, I'm Krishna's part and parcel. This sense gratification actually will have a beginning and an end. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the wise man does not engage in that because he knows there's a beginning and end. Let me rather go after the higher taste. 259, go after that higher taste. Even though the taste for sense object remains, no, I can give it up because I'm getting a higher taste. And we all know what that higher taste is. That's why we're here and we're talking this evening, because we know what that higher taste is. But the trick is that we have to more and more enter into that space where we get the higher taste, dovetail ourselves with Krishna, dovetail our consciousness with Krishna, Krishna consciousness. And the more we can do that, the more that taste will come automatically, and the more we'll lose the taste for the material nature. But because we're in the practicing stage, it's not so easy. We get tempted. There's something called anishtita bhakti. That means it's not steady. There's nishta. I don't know if you know those stages which Rupa Goswami enunciates. The 9 stages of the development of bhakti begins with shraddha, and then from shraddha we go to sadhasanga, then bhajana kriya, then anartha nivritti, then nishta. Nishta means steady. Nothing disturbs our devotional service. Then the anarthas are largely dealt with. And we get to the point where our devotional service is very steady. So there's something called anishtita bhakti. It means it's not steady. And there are different grades of that, different stages of that. So one of those stages is you fight with the material nature. It's called Vishaya Sangara. You actually fight with the material nature. Should I engage in sense gratification or not? You know, and we're all faced with that battle sometimes in our Krishna consciousness, faced with that battle. Oh, let me just relax a little bit and have a little bit of sense gratification. I was a good boy all week. This is what we're faced with. So we have to remember these instructions of Krishna at that time. You know, when we're faced with these challenges, what does Krishna say? This is why transcendental knowledge is so important. And to have that knowledge, that, you know, Krishna so beautifully identifies actually this lust, which he describes as the eternal enemy of the living entity. Yeah? It burns like fire and it's never satisfied. That's how you identify it. Then he goes further. He said, first of all, you have to identify the enemy if you're going to defeat him. Now, you have to know, what does he look like? Then you have to know, where does he reside? So Krishna says what he looks like. Now he burns like fire and it's never satisfied. That's what the enemy looks like. Where does he reside? You know, if you're fighting a battle, you have to do that. You have to find out what does he look like? Where is the enemy? What is his strength? And where is he situated? So Krishna says that. He resides in the senses, in the mind, and the intelligence. You have to know where that lust is residing. And then Krishna even gives the secret, how you defeat it, by regulating the senses and deliberate spiritual intelligence. No? Don't let the senses, in the beginning we have to do something, you know, but at least let's keep it regulated. Let it not run away with us. And at the same time, let us develop our Krishna consciousness. So in the beginning, these two go side by side. It's anishtita bhakti. We're doing some things which are devotional service, but we also were fighting with the material nature bit. It's called Vishaya Sangara, fighting a battle with the material nature. Should I enjoy or should I not? Like that. So we have to be very practical. At a time like that, we can remember these instructions which Krishna is giving. So the verse we looked at today, the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace through giving that soul more and more, is giving himself over to Krishna's will. Let me be in Krishna consciousness. Let me not try to enjoy the material nature. Let me offer the results of my work to Krishna. So that increasingly, more and more, we get that feeling. And we all know what that feeling is like. We all know that's an eternal feeling. And if we're in the right consciousness, we can get access to that. And we also know that it doesn't diminish. We're used to material pleasures. We know that diminishes. Everyone knows that. Everyone has that experience. But we know that this spiritual pleasure is different. It's not like that, actually. Actually, often, you know, I think kirtan is probably the best example of that. When there is a rip-roaring kirtan, the more we give ourselves, we forget, you know, we won't worry about who's singing or how they're playing the kartals or the mridanga, and we just give ourselves to hearing and chanting of the holy name. More and more you get drawn into the kirtan, and more you get the taste of the spiritual nature, isn't it? So actually that's the nature of the spiritual enjoyment. It is ananda buddhi vardhanam. It is ever increasing. It doesn't get less. So we can make these comparisons. Krishna's given us the information. You know, we can make these comparisons in our mind. Okay, I'm tempted by this material sense pleasure, but how long will it last? How long? You can ask yourself. Okay, so maybe I should go and listen to my favorite kirtan instead. Or you can, you know, when Prabhupada started the movement, they used to keep ISKCON bullets in the temple room. Do you know what ISKCON bullets are? You don't know? I'm amazed you don't know. ISKCON bullets are gulab jamun. There are two kinds of gulab jamun. One is the Gujarati way, where the sugar syrup there is absorbed and you don't leave it soaking in the sugar syrup. But the Bengali one, you leave it soaking in the sugar syrup. It's said if you soak it for a couple of days, it's even better. So Prabhupada used to keep a jar of these ISKCON bullets in the temple in 26 2nd Avenue. And the devotees knew that ISKCON bullets. So if you get tempted, then what the devotees used to do, they would go and eat one of those ISKCON bullets, you know? The idea being that, okay, you're faced with the temptation of the material nature, so let's get the taste of the spiritual nature. And Krishna is so kind that he's given us that with the things that we eat. This is the only philosophical system I know of anywhere in the world where you can eat your way back to Godhead. It's the only one. I don't know of any others like that. So this is the thing, we have to be practical, we have to be intelligent, we have to absorb these instructions which Krishna is telling them, and then we now have to know how to apply it in our lives. A steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. All. It's Krishna's nature. Okay, maybe the external nature, the material nature, but if you offer it to Krishna, it becomes spiritual, and then no reaction. That we dealt with in 4th chapter. I hope you remember that. That's probably a few weeks ago now. You dealt with that in 4th chapter. 3 kinds of activities: karma, akarma, and vikarma. Karma actually is a special word. It's not just any activity. It means activities that are enjoined by the Vedic scriptures. You can call it religious sense gratification. That is allowed, but it slowly purifies you if you follow the Veda. Then there's vikarma, that we should avoid. Those vikarma, that means activities which are forbidden by the scripture. Why they're forbidden? Because they degrade us. But better than both of these two is akarma, activities which do not produce a material reaction. So this is what Krishna is discussing here. We have to learn to do that. And we do that by offering the results of our activities to Krishna. My dear Lord Krishna, you put me in this situation. I am sure that it's just perfect for me. And you'll give me opportunities to learn and become a better devotee. We can rely on that because Krishna wants us to come back to Godhead. But we have to practice. We have to stretch ourselves, get out of our comfort zone and try more and more. Surrender. Now, what does surrender mean? Surrender means surrender to the process of Krishna consciousness, the process, as much as we can. Chant Krishna's name. Follow the principles as much as we can. Read Srila Prabhupada's books, because all these things will help us. They help us become stronger. Like if you lift weights, if you lift 5 kilogram weights every day for a year, will you be stronger at the end of it? Yes, it will be stronger. So we have to do the same thing. We have to stretch ourselves a little bit, do a little bit more, offer the results of our activity to Krishna, mix with the devotees, chant the holy name with attention, read a little bit Srila Prabhupada's books. We have to practice the things we want to be good at. And gradually, little by little, we'll become better. And we will come to this platform. We will come to this platform eventually. If we stick to the process that Prabhupada has given and we practice remembering Krishna's instructions, we will come to that platform. The platform which is described here is unadulterated peace, which is actually what we're looking for. But more than that, actually, we want to go beyond that. Because how long can peace satisfy you? How long can peace? We actually want the relationship with Krishna. So this is the beginning. You get free from the material nature, but that's not enough, actually. We want relationship with Krishna. So this is the beginning. You come to the platform, it's called Brahma Bhuta platform. You understand I'm pure spirit soul, nothing to do with this material nature. Then you come into contact with the super soul, and you meditate on the super soul, and you realize the super soul is a person, and that person is so incredible, I should surrender to that person. Let me surrender to this incredible person. And then we become bhaktas. But we have been given the whole process. We can get in the lift and we can push the button, and all these things will happen immediately. But we do have to practice detachment. That we have to practice to understand what's material and what's spiritual, and increasingly try and stay away from the material and practice this. Let me offer the results of my activities to Krishna as much as we possibly can, and gradually we will grow. And one day we'll wake up and there will be Krishna waiting for us. Or the chariot will be sent, like Dhruva Maharaj. You know that story, Dhruva Maharaj, actually? The chariot was sent from the spiritual world. And at the same time, death personified approached him, because death personified will approach all of us one day. So what he did was he stepped on the head of death and he stepped into the chariot, and off he went to the spiritual world. So this is what's on offer, but we have to practice. We can't expect Krishna to do everything. Krishna's done so much, actually. Krishna sent Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and made so many arrangements. It has become so easy in this age. The only thing we have to do is practice a little bit. And Krishna even says at the beginning of 2nd chapter, he says, if you make a little advancement on this path, there is no loss or diminution. And it will save you from the most dangerous type of fear, which means going down into animal species. So we should do the best we can, and we should push ourselves a little bit. When we study these verses, we should make notes and remember, because if you hear it and you write the notes, it helps it stay in the consciousness. It helps it to stay. And then you can go further. You can tell others what you learned. We were in class this week. When you come to another devotee, we're in class this week, and this is what the speaker was saying, and I found it really instructive. You share it with another devotee like that, it becomes even stronger in your heart. This is why Shravanam Kirtanam are the most important parts of the process. You hear, and then you share, and it becomes stuck in your heart. It becomes a realization. So these verses are not theory. They are meant to be practiced. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. Now, this is the side we don't want to be on. What Krishna said, this is the comparison, which we have experience of. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, that was our position before we met the devotees. We were not in union with the divine, mostly. Well, at least I wasn't. I can't say for you. But I certainly wasn't in union with the divine. And I was certainly greedy for the fruits of my action. I think everything I did at that stage was because I wanted to enjoy it. No? So I have this personal experience. Becomes entangled. Greedy for the fruits of your labor, you become entangled. You do one thing and you're going to get this result, and 14 other results come that you didn't want, and now you're stuck with some of them and you can't get rid of them. And then they make you do other things, and you thought, well, if I do this, then I'll get that result. And that didn't work out either. You got a little bit of the result you wanted, but then there's 72 other things which you hadn't planned for, and they make you do other stuff. So this is how the material nature works. And Krishna is offering the solution here. Dovetail your activities in me. You remember the dovetail joint? So it just fits so perfectly. Just fits like that. So this is how we should, whatever we're good at, let us do that for Krishna. And the thing is we're stuck in that we can't get out of. Let's offer that to Krishna. My dear Lord Krishna, I'm in this situation. What can I do? I need to earn a living. Please forgive me. And Krishna will understand. So we have to be very practical. We have to look at our situation and have the understanding and intelligence to apply what Krishna is telling us to our own situation so that we can move forward. And there's lots of help there. There are devotees that are older than us, more experienced than us. We can go to them and we can ask them for help. We can read Srila Prabhupada's books, and on every page, Srila Prabhupada is telling us what to do, what not to do. Deliberate spiritual intelligence. Anyway, these are some of the things that come to my mind when I read this verse. The difference between the person and Krishna consciousness, actually, it brings one verse to my mind from the second chapter. I don't know if you know this verse, a very wonderful verse. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. We have to become like that. Because at night, what do we do? Mostly.
We sleep.
Yeah, we sleep. So are we active?
We work.
We're not active. We may dream, but we're not really active at night, no? But during the day, we're very active. We do lots of things, no? So here, as Krishna is saying, what is night for all beings? In other words, the spiritual things that most beings don't do, that's the thing that the introspective sage does. And similarly, the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective soul. During the day, everyone's busy. So what are most beings doing? They're involved in sense gratification. But that's night for the introspective sage. He doesn't get involved in those activities. So we have to learn to become like this. That the whole world is out there to get their sense gratification. We have to understand that's night for us. That is something we should rather engage all our activities in Krishna's service like that. And then similarly, what is when all beings like, I'm going to the temple now. Of course, you maybe can't go to the temple now, but I'm going home to listen to Kirtan and read Srila Prabhupada's books. Do most living entities do that? No, they don't do that, but we're awake at that time. Of course, if you want to take this a little bit further, we should try and awaken other souls. Like one of my all-time favorite quotes of my spiritual master is, the devotees are coming to us and they're shaking us and they're saying, Prabhu, this is a dream. It's time to wake up now. So we have to do that for some other. We're getting the understanding. Some devotees have come and shook us and they've said, Bhakta Steve, that's what I was called before I was Shyamananda. Bhakta Steve, it's a dream. You have to wake up now. So somebody has done that for me, so we have to help other living, just very gently, Because if you care about somebody, do you wake them with a start? No, if you care about somebody, wake them very gently. Like I wake my wife sometimes like that by stroking her on the nose, just very gently like that. It's a nice way of waking someone up without making a big deal about it. Or you can just gently touch them on the hand or the arm like that. So when we're waking up souls from the dream, Mahavishnu's dream, the dream of this reality, so-called reality, let's do it gently. Prabhu, you know, just take one of these gulab jamans. They're really good. That's like a loving brother or a loving sister. We have to wake up, and we have to help others wake up as well. Anyway, there's a few minutes left. See, there's some of the things that occur to me when I am reading these verses. I've shared some of those, and I hope it's food for thought for you. And if there are comments, realizations, or questions, we can discuss further.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for summarizing. We were not, throughout the week, we had been reading the verses, but we haven't had mentors. So it has clarified a lot of issues that we've had. And so on behalf of everybody from Eldoret and all over the world, we'd like to pay our humble obeisances and lots of Dandvat Pranam, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, there is one question on the chat. I've asked people to write the questions on the chat. So this was a question from me in the beginning when we read the purport, the word duality came, and it has been coming throughout in all these verses. So if you can, I know you have clarified it, but in our reading sessions, we had a lot of problems explaining just the word and what it means.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that now because I looked at the first line. I thought it's not a question, but the second line is a question. Yeah, what is duality? See, duality means pairs of opposites. Krishna actually has talked about this as raga and dvesha. Raga means things we're attached to, and dvesha means things we're averse to. So the material nature is full of those. You know, even Krishna speaks about some of those: gain and loss, heat and cold, happiness and distress. Prem is giving me one. My wife's giving me one. She always helps me so much. Honor and dishonor. These are pairs of dualities, and the whole material nature is running on these dualities, and we are bewildered like that. There's one verse where Krishna says that living entities is well bewildered by raga and dvesha, 7th chapter. I think it's 28th verse. No? 28. Just look that verse up for me, Prema. I think it's 728. And all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by desire and aversion. Things they want and things they don't want. And that is what traps us. Prema's looking the verse up for me now. I'm pretty sure it's 728. So this is how we get trapped by the material nature. Things we want in the material nature, that's positive attraction, and things we don't want, that's negative attraction. But they're flip sides of the same coin. So while we see dualities, yes, it's 727. O Skyna Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. The duality, the hot and the cold, the good and the bad, you know, the honor and dishonor, the gain and loss. So while we're absorbed in dualities, actually, there's no hope for us, actually. We have to understand that those dualities come and go. It's hot now. You know, during the hot, we hope it's going to be wintertime. And when it's wintertime, we hope it's going to be summertime. So it's a pair of dualities. We get caught up in that. But we know, if we're intelligent, we know that the summer comes and it gets hot, but after some time, what will happen? It'll get cold again, especially if you're in England. It'll get cold again. So again, when it's cold, and we know it'll get hot again. So these are pairs of dualities. They come and go. I quoted that verse, actually. Krishna says in 2:14, you have to learn to tolerate them. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the coming and going of winter and summer seasons. And one has to learn to tolerate them without being disturbed, with the understanding that we know this world is full of dualities. So we have to let go of that. Something comes which is positive, okay, I've got to do it, let me do it. Something comes which is negative, okay, what to do? You know, to be equal in the face of those dualities, to understand they will come and they'll go. And it's all material nature. So actually, Prabhupada gave the example, it's a little gross, but it's very instructive in this respect. You give the example of wet stool and dry stool. You know, it's all stool, actually, whether it's good, it's supposedly good karma or supposedly bad karma, because good karma and bad karma both keep you in the material world. You know, so we have to learn to understand look upon earth, a lump of earth, pebbles and gold as the same. Krishna's mentioned that, you know, to understand that it looks positive, but it's still material nature. But rather let me be in communion with Krishna, not be worried by these pairs of opposites. You know, because we're going to meet with dishonor. Sometimes we're going to be dishonored. Sometimes we're going to be honored. How long will it last? And, you know, sometimes you don't even remember it. Oh, yeah, somebody reminds you, oh, you were dishonored in this situation. We don't even remember it. So the thing is to be equal, to understand this looks positive, but then after some time it'll go away. This looks negative, but equally it will go away. So not to be absorbed in this raga and dvesha. I want this and I don't want that. Pairs of opposites. Does that help?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. You have reminded us of the Sthita Prajna, which we did in chapter 2.
Yeah, Sthita Prajna, yeah. The personality was steady in both happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor. Krishna preaches this in many places in Bhagavad Gita, actually, 4th chapter, 5th chapter, 12th chapter. It's there in so many places. We have to learn to tolerate the comings and goings of the material nature. Okay, looks like there are no other questions. Unless anybody wants to ask something, please feel free.
Kindly unmute yourself and ask the question.
If anybody has comment or question or realization, you know, because when we share together, that's also helpful if we have realizations about what we read. I mean, I like to learn from those as well. Just because I'm the class facilitator doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
So there is a question on the chat, Prabhuji.
Oh, yes. Is it correct doing full-time without doing any duty work? You see, that's good. This is from Shashwin. This is a really nice question. Actually, it doesn't... my question. Is it correct doing full-time devotional service without doing our duty? You see, full-time devotional service is our duty, actually. It actually is our duty, but we have to consider as well, Arjuna, in one sense, wanted to do that. You know, wanted to do full-time devotional service, wanted to go to the forest and avoid the battle. But Krishna told him, no, actually, you must do your duty. Because, you know, whatever situation we're in, we have dependence. You know, you have a wife, you have a child in your case, you know. So we can't walk away from that. You know, we have to do our duty. Our prarabdha, our manifest situation is there. We have to execute those responsibilities. And it's true for everyone. If you're at a young stage of your life, you know, and you don't have so much responsibilities and you're keen, well, sure, you can come to the temple and we'll train you up. But usually after some time, those devotees will also get married, have children. So in one sense, it doesn't actually matter where we are because it's a question of Krishna consciousness. So you can do that. The devotees who do that and live their lives like that, they join the temple and they eventually become sannyasis and they just do so-called devotional service all the time. They're rare. They're very rare. For most of us, actually, we will have to be engaged in our various duties in the material world, dealing with the material energy, executing our responsibilities. We'll have to do that, actually, for most of us. So the trick is to make that Krishna conscious. This house that I'm living in is actually Krishna's house. Let me put a picture of Krishna or the deity of Krishna. Then it's Krishna's temple. Then everything I'm doing is for Krishna's temple. It's devotional service. You know, my wife and my son, actually in your case, your son is such a wonderful devotee. So whatever you're doing then is actually supporting yourself and your wife and your son, who are all devotees. So then you're taking care of, it's not like, you know, you're going out there to earn money to satisfy your family, but you're rather maintaining Krishna's devotees. So this way, if we just learn to look at things in the proper way, it's all Krishna's energy. The house is Krishna's energy. Even your body that you're walking around in is Krishna's energy. And it's meant for Krishna's service, actually. So it's not a question of geographical location. Where do you live? Oh, I live in the temple, so I'm a devotee. No, I'm living at home, so I'm not a devotee. No, it's a question of our consciousness, actually. So you can do that, but for most people, it doesn't go like that. For most people, we have to learn to be Krishna conscious in the situation we're in. And our philosophy is so wonderful, it's very practical like that. I don't know if that, because that's your son's name, isn't it, Shashan?
Yes.
I don't know what your name is.
This is my son name, Prabhuji.
Yes. What's your name?
My name is Kumar, Muthu Kumar.
Uta Kumar. Wow, what a wonderful name. So is my answer to your question satisfactory to you?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Correct.
Prabhuji, I have a question and I haven't written in the chat, but I'll just ask. So when we are doing, so for example, when you are chanting, is it Maya? I just wanted an answer to what I'm feeling. So when I'm chanting, my mind says, no, let's not chant today. Today is a wonderful lecture by Shyamanand Krishna Das. Let's attend that. When I'm doing any devotional other service, then the mind will try to distract you. So is it,
Sure.
So you are doing devotional service, but there is these distractions even in the devotional service.
Yes. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is given a hierarchy of how things should be done. And it's very surprising what Srila Prabhupada says is number one. Prabhupada says number one is our health. This is the first thing to take care of. Because if we don't take care of our health, we can't serve. So health is number one. Number two is chanting your rounds. Number two is chanting. Number three is service. And number four is reading. Of course, we should try to do all of them. But if it's a choice between taking care of if there's some health issue, you must take care of that. And then next comes the chanting, because that's the Yuga Dharma. Everything is based on our chanting. We get our strength from our chanting, we get a Krishna consciousness from our chanting primarily. So the chanting must come next. So if it's a choice, if you've only done 14 rounds and your mind is telling you, okay, must go and make garlands for Srila Prabhupada or whatever it is, you can tell your mind, no, Srila Prabhupada said we must complete our chanting first. Then when you completed your chant, if your mind, the temple president asks you to make you're reading Srila Prabhupada's books and the temple president asks you to make a garland for Srila Prabhupada, you can remember that Prabhupada said that serve, if we get a chance to serve, we should do that and we can read afterwards. So this is the hierarchy. First health, then chanting, then service, then reading. So does that help?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
This is Prabhupada has said this.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for reminding us. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Pundrik Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji, for joining in. And there are lots of other devotees from London who has joined today. So thank you all devotees for joining in. I know today, Prabhuji, today is Diwali. Happy Diwali and Happy New Year. Thank you for coming and enlightening us on this Diwali day. So,
Kirtika Mataji?
Smita Mataji's
Can
voice. Yes.
Hare
yes.
Krishna, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to, can I quickly carry on with the last question?
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, is that all right?
No,
yes,
no,
yes.
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhuji. So, given the choice, because I may not want to chant because I'm the most horrible soul in this entire universe, but I may want to offer prasad. So in my thing, given the choice, I'd rather offer than chant. But really, we should listen to what Srila Prabhupada said. But then surely...
Yes, I mean...
It's better to
there's
something.
Room. Yeah, sure. There's room for movement in that. You see, general principles apply to different situations. There may be room for movement. So this is a general principle, But if we're in a situation, say, it's in the morning, and we've only done 8 rounds, we need to cook something for family for ourselves. It's practical to say, okay, I can finish rounds later. Now I need to. So it's a general principle we're discussing. It's like one time Prabhupada said that, it's good to steal Mahaprasad. He said that it's good to, as a general principle, it's good. So one time, one devotee actually was so expert at stealing the Mahaprasad that all the pujaris got very upset. So they brought it to Srila Prabhupada and they said, but you said, it's good to steal Mahaprasad. And Prabhupada said, yes, but I didn't make it an injunction. It's not written in stone that you must do it. And he told that devotee, so you steal the Mahaprasad, but you don't disturb the devotees. So simply we have to be practical. There are general principles, but we have to know how to apply those in different situations. So for instance, if you're feeling, okay, I need to cook, or I want to cook, it's necessary, okay, then put your rounds aside and finish them later. So it's not written in stone, but it's a general principle to guide devotees. Okay, what's important? To chant my 16 rounds is a very important thing. That must come like very high up my list, must be first. Then, okay, service is necessary. I must do some service. So Prabhupada gave this hierarchy as a general guideline, but there's room for movement. Is that all right?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? I know we have exceeded our time, but
Yeah, sorry for that.
That's okay, Prabhuji. We are really enjoying ourselves. We are sorry that not a lot of devotees have been able to join because of festivities.
But it doesn't matter the number. It doesn't matter. It's the same. Whether it's one person or 5,000, we still have to do our best with the class. No, it doesn't matter how many.
Okay. If there are no other questions, any questions? Okay, if there are no questions or comments or any realizations, then we'd like to, let's all chant to glorify Prabhuji, Shyamanand Krishna Das. Let's all unmute and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji ki. Jai.
Jai.
Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your association today. And we are very grateful, and we hope that you can spare some time for next Sunday as well. We are really, really grateful.
I wish everyone a good week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.